Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni Viewer, and welcome to Genre Bender's Obscurities and Flawed Gems, where we look at the best stuff you've never heard of. Back in 2018, a German power metal band known as Victorius completely redefined itself.
Up until then, the band had released several albums that had done well enough to sustain them, but which didn't really skyrocket. Having listened to that older material, I can say that while it's not bad, it doesn't really have anything to make it stand out, especially on the lyrical front, given the par-for-the-course fantasy themes.
But in 2018, they released Dinosaur Warfare Legend of the Powersaurus, a concept EP that went in a completely new direction from anything on the market.
Within its 5 songs, Dinosaur Warfare wove a story about mankind resurrecting prehistoric dino gods as super cyborgs to stop an alien invasion. It was over the top, cheesier than a macaroni dish, and contained music samples from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It was also a wonderful listening experience, and I said in my review that if Victorius continued in this unique direction, I'd be their new biggest fan.
Well, their most recent album may not be a literal continuation, but it certainly is a spiritual successor. I present for your consideration, Space Ninjas from Hell.
Before we start, I'm just going to display the full track listing for you to read, just so you know what we're getting into ahead of time. Also, take a good long look at the cover art. Everything you see on this cover will be part of the listening experience. I just want to make sure you're fully prepared for what awaits you, and even then, you still might not be.
Before we do a track-by-track analysis, here's the overall summary. Much like its predecessor, Space Ninjas from Hell is best described as B-movie metal.
By that, I mean it's the musical equivalent of a campy sci-fi action flick, the kind that you know is ridiculous and you would publicly call it a guilty pleasure to distance yourself from it and save face, but privately your love for it is genuine and your home is filled with memorabilia, not to mention you once attended a convention cosplaying as your favorite character and you have a tattoo inspired by the film somewhere on your person.
Sorry, that kinda spiraled for a bit. Suffice it to say, Space Ninjas from Hell is cheesy, the band knows it, and they are proud of it.
The album has a healthy sense of humor to it as well, but that doesn't mean it's a comedy piece like what Weird Al Yankovic does. It's not being funny, but it is having fun, and invites you to have fun along with it.
But how do the individual songs measure up? Let's dive in and take a closer look. Or listen, as it were.
Our first track, Tale of the Sunbladers, throws us headfirst into the world by introducing us to the Sunbladers, the official clan name of the Space Ninjas.
Musically, this song sounds a lot like early Dragon Force, back when ZP Third was still the vocalist. Then again, that's the sound Victorius started with anyway, so I can't fault them for consistency. And even in spite of the similarities, it's still good music.
Lyrically, it's a call to arms, the big rousing speech before the battle as the Sunbladers prepare to arrive on Earth.
It's such an uplifting tune that it might take you a moment to realize the Sunbladers are actually the bad guys.
Yes, unlike Dinosaur Warfare, which highlighted the monstrous defenders of Earth, Space Ninjas is primarily about the villains, an army of technology-infused martial arts masters who seek to conquer the Earth rather than save it. It makes for an interesting spin on the concept, as most power metal songs are built around heroism. Focusing on the villains is a rare sight for this genre.
Then again, everyone loves a great villain, so as we go through, we'll see if this decision pays off.
After rallying the troops, Ninjas Unite spells out the intentions of the invaders. They are coming to Earth for vengeance and to re-establish their once great terrestrial empire.
Now yes, those terms do imply that the Space Ninjas have a history with Earth, one in which they feel they were wronged, thus giving them the mindset that their actions now are justified.
This song doesn't reveal the details of their backstory, but it does convey the rage of the Sunbladers. They are coming and they will show no mercy. As such, the music here makes it one of the heavier and angrier songs on the album. Something about the way it all comes together doesn't really appeal to my ears the way other songs here do, but that doesn't mean I think it's a bad song by any stretch. It's still worth listening to in my book, just not as much as the others.
He's a super
Up to now, we've gotten songs about the general story. Now it's time to meet some of the individual players, starting with the Supersonic Samurai. You know you love that name.
This cyborg samurai with a laser katana, a jetpack built into his armor, and the power of super speed is not part of the Space Ninja Army, but rather originates on Earth to oppose the invasion. His foes may be angry, but he's even angrier, and that makes him deadly.
Much like the character songs on Dinosaur Warfare, the lyrics do a good job of building the subject up as an imposing figure, and the music is back to getting the listener pumped up.
Combine it with the colorful visuals from the music video, and we know exactly who this guy is going in. Definitely a highlight of the album.
Now here is where things start to get semi-complex. The next character we meet is a bad dude, which means he's not a hero, but he's not one of the space ninjas either.
Rather, the evil sorcerer of this story appears to be a wild card, somebody who is no friend of the invaders, but not necessarily a friend to mankind either. Is he naturally evil, or was he really misled as the lyrics suggest? An air of ambiguity surrounds the Wushu master. If I'm being frank, the lyrics of the song don't fully convey the Asian influences heard elsewhere on the album, but all the same, the inclusion of a mysterious friend or foe type in this tale is a nice touch. From the island nation of Japan come the Nippon Knights, collectively the only force on Earth who stand a chance at defeating the Space Ninjas, for they have some technological tricks of their own, not to mention some sweet rides.
This song is where the album starts displaying its sense of humor.
The lyrics at one point imply ties between these mighty warriors and the video game industry, and the bridge randomly invokes bragging rights based around Japanese car brands. Then you have the music itself, which sounds like the sort of thing you would hear on a classic Mortal Kombat level.
It's all ridiculous, of course, but it serves as a good reminder that this album is supposed to be fun.
Maybe some metalheads out there will invoke this song as a reason to write the album off entirely, saying that real heavy metal is supposed to hit you in the face rather than make you laugh. To this I simply ask, why isn't there room for all varieties of metal? Why can't metal be allowed to have fun? Why must it be angry all the time?
Anyway, the song is loads of fun and it gives us more heroes to root for. Up next, something's a little off, but not because of the song itself.
Shuriken Showdown for the space underground. Cosmic fire bring the
Halfway through the album, I find myself wondering if some of these songs were arranged out of order.
The lyrics to Shuriken Showdown seem like they're describing the end of the story, wherein the Space Ninjas and the Nippon Knights finally clash and we are simply told that all the losers are dead, which I guess means we get to decide who won.
I feel like this must be the ending, because if it's not, the album doesn't technically have one. In fact, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
The alternative interpretation might be that this is a look into the Space Ninjas' political process, describing a tournament where they determine their leader through Mortal Kombat. Either one could potentially work. Much like the previous track, Shuriken Showdown continues the video game illusions with its hook, and would probably be a favorite for people who like syncing anime clips to music.
In fact, I would love to see what AMV editors can come up with for any song from this album. I bet we'd get some really interesting stuff.
In comes another character song, and once again, there seems to be some ambiguity about whether or not this guy is a hero or a villain. What we have described here is a soldier who becomes a green rage monster every time he eats wasabi.
I had wasabi once by accident, so I believe such a thing could happen in real life. All seriousness here, I'm actually starting to feel my tongue burn a little just thinking about it. That's better.
In short, the wasabi war machine is the Incredible Hulk fueled by spices rather than gamma rays, and yes, the similarities are 100% intentional. Since he doesn't use technology the way the Space Ninjas do, it's possible he's another one of the heroes.
Actually, this song has something in common with Nippon Nights. It injects a bit of levity by way of an opening dialogue sketch that sounds like a very badly made cartoon.
Whoa! What the heck are you guys?
We're sushi!
These are the only 2 songs on the album that deliberately aim for comedy, so perhaps that's meant to connect them and tell us that the War Machine is a good guy, even if he has a bad reputation. Maybe this one is up to the individual listener.
We will raise our sword for the Fire Lord, for the King we ride, mighty dragon god, we will carry on. Stand as...
You didn't think we'd get through this without a giant monster showing up, did you?
Now we're back to exploring the Space Ninjas side of things, this time meeting the dragon god which they worship. This deity turns out to be not only a real physical being, but also a highly active one who joins the clan for the invasion. If I had to critique this song for anything, it would be that it can't quite seem to make up its mind about whether or not it's describing an Eastern or Western dragon. Then again, maybe that's the point. Perhaps it's meant to be something in between, a true kaiju that transcends things like culture. The more I think about it, the more appropriate that interpretation feels.
Whatever the case, we have another giant monster song to complement the previous album's tracks, and since it's a good song, I can't really complain that much about perceived inconsistencies.
Astral assassin shark attack, the cosmic space beast is back.
Just in case you thought this album wasn't cheesy enough, now it's drawing from sharksploitation.
The Space Ninjas aren't just using laser swords and jetpacks, and they aren't just invoking their monstrous deity. They also captured sharks that just naturally live in the vacuum of space and made them their steeds. This is the cheesiest song on the album, and also one of my favorites. It's the album's proof of concept, if you will, the ultimate evidence that it's just meant to be intentionally and unashamedly ridiculous.
Honestly, how can you listen to a song about cyborg ninjas riding giant cosmic sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads and not smile at the gung-ho sincerity of it?
Perhaps the appeal for me stems entirely from my love of campy fiction, but I am what I am and I like what I like. This is yet another highlight for me.
Here we are, men and possessed, bound by the eternal spell, space ninjas from hell.
Okay, so we've gotten to know the characters, creatures, and locations of this world, but why exactly are the space ninjas attacking? And how can they be both space ninjas and ninjas from hell? Well, 10 songs in, the title track finally elaborates on the backstory.
You see, the Sunblader clan was originally from Earth, but when they attempted to conquer the world centuries ago, they were defeated and banished to Hell. In this case, it wasn't the afterlife version of Hell, but an inhospitable planet called Hell, which can be found on the dark side of the sun.
You heard me. The dark side of the sun. A ball of fire which by definition has no dark side. Remember, this is supposed to be ridiculous.
So now our villains have a motive. They tried to conquer the world and got kicked out as a result, so they spent the centuries which followed regrouping and preparing for a rematch. It doesn't make them sympathetic, mind you, but it does add some substance to them. They aren't just evil for evil's sake, and now the references to vengeance from the earlier songs make more sense.
Like any good villain backstory, it enriches the experience and provides a good motivation. And it doesn't forget to skimp on all of that glorious cheese.
Cosmic space commando base, prepare to attack, ready to encourage.
This song isn't about a character, but about a location.
This is where the Space Ninjas set up camp for their invasion. A space station with all of the troops, weapons, and astral sharks they need to conquer Earth, but not a single pair of underwear.
If you don't get it, pause and think about it for a second. It'll come to you.
Again, the cheese is strong with this one, as evidenced by the lack of irony in a title that contains the words cosmic and space as if they don't mean the exact same thing. Narratively speaking, it's not entirely necessary, but musically, it's a real earworm that I enjoy listening to.
In fact, when interviewed, the band has made a point of noting that this song is one of the few they've ever written in a major key. This means Cosmic Space Commando bass adds a little variety to the listening experience in a subtle way.
Rock and metal bands often add variety to their albums by doing one song that's a little bit different. Usually this means an album of fast and heavy tunes will have a strategically placed slow ballad thrown into the mix. Or maybe one song will feature acoustic guitars rather than electric ones. Here, it's the simple act of composing in major rather than minor that does the trick. Come to think of it, they did the same thing for Laser-Tooth Tiger last time.
So the last proper song on the album doesn't really add much to the story, but it does shake up the auditory experience in a good way. And for an album, that is important.
Thousands of years ago, in the ancient realm of Japan, people lived peacefully and
At the very end, we get a spoken word piece underscored by ambient music, credited, I kid you not, to Mr. Miyagi in the liner notes. Unfortunately, Pat Nakamura did not come back from the grave to work on the album, but I'm sure he would have if they offered.
This once again has me wondering if some of the songs were arranged out of order, because Shinobi Strike 3000 feels more like an introduction.
By placing it at the end, the intent changes from "Welcome to the Grand Legend" to "Let me explain what just happened in case you didn't get it." Then again, given how much it explains about the story, perhaps it's at the end because they determined putting it at the beginning would give too much away. It ties together all of the loose ends, and now you can go back and listen again with a greater understanding of what's going on. There's still no ending to the story, which means we still don't know who wins, but that's what fanfiction is for.
So this is what happens when Victorius commits to its B-movie aesthetic for a whole album. And I embrace it wholeheartedly.
Space Ninjas from Hell is a worthy successor to Dinosaur Warfare, and I think both albums provide the band with a good direction. Embrace the cheese, have a sense of humor, don't be ashamed to be ridiculous. So long as they commit to this, I see a bright future for Victorius. Of course, my ultimate hope is that one day we get a crossover between these two albums. To not do so would be such a wasted opportunity.
Well, whatever the future holds, there's no denying the present is full of good music. I recommend Space Ninjas from Hell wholeheartedly, but only if you are strong enough to handle the craziness. There are only a few in this world who are metal enough to take this much cheese. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. I'm dead serious about the crossover thing, by the way. These two albums, put together, shared universe, come on. It needs to happen.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, as well as subscribe to the channel for more content of a similar nature. Also, check the description for links to our Twitter, DeviantArt, and Patreon pages, as well as the Amazon link for the novel Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, penned by yours truly. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.